Braveheart. Mistake number 8. The Kilt Catastrophe. Mel Gibson's Braveheart opens with one of the most iconic images in movie history. William Wallace, painted blue, sword in hand, storming into battle with fire in his eyes. The camera sweeps across the battlefield, bagpipes roar, and there he is, wearing a kilt. To audiences, this instantly screams Scottish pride. But here's the twist. Wallace never wore a kilt, and neither did any of his warriors. Why? Because kilts weren't invented until the 16th century, more than 2 centuries after Wallace's death. Imagine watching a film about George Washington leading the American Revolution in a Yankees baseball cap. That's how inaccurate this choice was. Historically, Wallace and his men would have worn woolen tunics, cloaks, and possibly chainmail, but never the Highland dress Hollywood insists on showing. The kilt as we know it today is a much later symbol of Scottish identity, not medieval armor. But Braveheart doesn't stop there. To add romantic tension, the film introduces a forbidden affair between Wallace and Princess Isabella of France. On screen, it's passionate and tragic. Pure Hollywood gold. In reality, Isabella was only 10 years old at the time of Wallace's death. She didn't even arrive in England until 3 years after his execution. So this legendary love story was pure fabrication. Hollywood wanted a romance and history got tossed aside. By the way, if you're enjoying these jaw-dropping mistakes already, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss the next historical blunder we uncover. Braveheart isn't even the wildest example of rewriting history for entertainment. Because Ridley Scott's next movie turns a Roman emperor into a murderous villain in ways that shocked historians everywhere. Gladiator. The Colosseum Time Warp. Mistake number 7. Gladiator gave us epic battles, unforgettable quotes, and Russell Crowe's iconic performance as Maximus. It also gave us one of the biggest historical rewrites in movie history. The film depicts Emperor Commodus as a power-hungry tyrant who murdered his father, Marcus Aurelius, in cold blood to seize the throne. Sounds dramatic. But here's what really happened. Marcus Aurelius died of natural causes, and Commodus was actually appointed as his heir. There was no bloody betrayal. And then there's the Colosseum itself. The movie shows an underground maze of advanced elevators and trapdoors, lifting tigers, elephants, and gladiators into the arena. While the Colosseum did have a hypogeum beneath the stage, the kind of sophisticated machinery shown in the movie wasn't built until decades after Commodus's reign. So, when we see gladiators dramatically rising from the floor, that's more engineering fiction than fact. Even the exotic animal fights were misrepresented. Tigers, for example, would have been astronomically expensive to import and maintain, costing more than some Roman villas. While Romans did stage animal hunts, most gladiator battles involved condemned criminals or other trained fighters, not endless streams of wild beasts. Rome was brutal, yes, but also practical with its resources. Would you have spotted that detail watching the film, or would the spectacle have fooled you too? And speaking of impossible inventions, Hollywood goes completely over the top in Disney's Mulan, the fireworks fiasco, mistake number 6. In one of Disney's most dramatic moments, Mulan saves China by triggering an avalanche with massive fireworks. It's colorful, explosive, and thrilling. But there's a major issue. Gunpowder, the ingredient behind fireworks, wasn't invented until the 9th century, about 400 years after the events of Mulan's legend. So the avalanche of rockets and explosions, completely impossible. If we want to put it in perspective, it's like having King Arthur fend off invaders with a machine gun. It's fun on screen, but pure fantasy. The real Ballad of Mulan, written during the Northern Wei dynasty, doesn't mention the Huns at all. Instead, it vaguely refers to nomadic tribes from the north. And while the poem focuses on Mulan's bravery and loyalty, it makes no mention of fire-breathing dragons, comedy sidekicks, or firework battles. Of course, Mushu is one creative liberty fans will happily forgive. But the fireworks finale? That's just Disney magic bending history. Did Disney's version make you forget this was supposed to be a historical legend? Still, even this pales compared to how the next movie butchered hundreds of years of archaeology. Troy. The Archaeological Nightmare. Mistake number 5. When Troy hit theaters, it promised epic heroes, passionate romance, and a war that shook the ancient world. but historians and archaeologists cringed. For starters, the movie condenses a 10-year war into just a few weeks, throwing centuries of storytelling out the window. Then there's the weaponry. Bronze Age warriors wielding iron swords and wearing advanced armor that hadn't been invented yet? Historically impossible. And of course, the infamous Trojan horse. While the story of the horse has become legend, many scholars now believe Troy was destroyed by earthquakes and fire, not by a giant wooden statue wheeled into the city. But what really shocks is scale. Hollywood's Troy is a sprawling metropolis capable of launching 1,000 ships. The real Troy was much smaller, more like a fortified citadel housing about 5,000 people. Its harbor could maybe hold a dozen ships, nowhere near the armada described in legend. And those epic duels between heroes? Achilles and Hector clashing in single combat looks incredible on screen, but ancient warfare relied far more on tight formations, siege engines, and strategies. As for dragging Hector's body around the city walls, the body would have been destroyed in minutes. No dramatic parade possible. Do you think the truth makes the story less exciting, or does it prove reality is just as fascinating? But if Troy bent archaeology, Mel Gibson mangled entire centuries of history with Apocalypto, the timeline disaster mistake number 4. Mel Gibson shows up on this list again, this time for Apocalypto. The movie portrays the collapse of the Mayan civilization happening just as Spanish conquistadors arrive in the Americas. The problem? The great Mayan cities collapsed around the 9th century, more than 600 years before Columbus ever set foot in the New World. By the time the Spanish showed up, the once great cities were abandoned and swallowed by the jungle. The movie also exaggerates human sacrifice to apocalyptic levels, depicting mass slaughters that would have wiped out entire populations. In reality, while the Maya did practice human sacrifice, it was rare and reserved for specific occasions or important captives. Even the jungle setting is misleading. Classic Maya cities were surrounded by farmland and open areas. The endless rainforest scenes in the movie only reflect what happened centuries later after those cities were deserted. Would you have guessed the Maya collapse happened centuries before Europeans ever arrived? But Hollywood wasn't done turning history into comic book fantasy. That honor goes to 300, the Spartan superhero fantasy, mistake number 3. Few movies have blended history with myth as boldly as Zack Snyder's 300. The film portrays 300 Spartan warriors holding off millions of Persians, but in reality around 7,000 Greeks fought at Thermopylae, including the famous Spartans. The Spartans were heroic, yes, but they weren't alone. The movie also paints Sparta as a society devoted to freedom and heroism. The truth is much darker. Spartan citizens lived in constant fear of their helots, enslaved Greeks who outnumbered them 7-1. The Spartan system was built on oppression, not liberty. And then there's the Persian immortals. On screen, they wear skull masks and wield monstrous weapons. In reality, they were elite Persian soldiers dressed in scale armor, armed with spears and bows. They were called immortals because their ranks were always kept at exactly 10,000 men. Whenever one fell, he was immediately replaced. The fantasy doesn't stop there. Snyder's version throws in war elephants and mutant beasts. Xerxes never brought elephants to Greece, and as for those monstrous creatures, pure comic book invention. Did this film make you root for Sparta even though the real history was far more complicated? But bending history is one thing, another is breaking the laws of physics, like in The Patriot, the physics-defying finale mistake. Number 2. The Patriot is packed with emotional scenes and dramatic battles, but its grand finale completely ignores physics. We see Mel Gibson's character firing a musket with impossible speed, reloading and shooting in seconds. In real life, a skilled soldier took at least 30 seconds to reload. And that's if the flint sparked and the powder didn't misfire. And then there's the cannon fire. On screen, cannonballs bounce across the battlefield like bowling balls, neatly knocking down lines of soldiers. The reality? Cannonballs shattered, exploded, or buried themselves in the ground on impact. They didn't bounce gracefully across the dirt. The most infamous moment comes when a soldier has his legs blown off by a cannonball, yet remains conscious and speaking. A real cannonball traveling at over 1,000 feet per second would have obliterated him instantly. There would have been no dramatic monologue, only instant death. Can you believe audiences actually accepted that as realistic? But if that seems bad, wait until you see how Hollywood tried to rewrite the Second World War entirely in U-571, the code-breaking catastrophe. Mistake number 1. At number 1, we have U-571, a film that doesn't just stretch the truth. It completely erases one of the most important Allied victories of World War II. In the movie, American sailors bravely capture a German U-boat and seize the Enigma machine, turning the tide of the war. The truth is very different. The British Royal Navy captured the first naval Enigma machine months before the United States even entered the war. In May 1941, HMS Bulldog seized U-110 and its Enigma machine. Pearl Harbor, the event that brought the U.S. into the conflict, didn't happen until December of that same year. Even worse, the film ignores the Polish mathematicians who cracked the Enigma codes as early as 1932, 9 years before the events shown in the movie. Their work laid the foundation for the British efforts at Bletchley Park, where Alan Turing and his team built on those breakthroughs to crack the code on a massive scale. By erasing the Polish and the British contributions, U-571 turned a true story of international cooperation into an inaccurate American action thriller. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a complete rewriting of history. Final thought. From kilts that never existed to cannonballs that defied physics, Hollywood has rewritten history again and again for the sake of spectacle. These films may be entertaining, but they often leave us with a warped view of the past. Which of these mistakes shocked you the most? Or did I miss one that deserves the top spot? Share it in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next round of unbelievable historic movie blunders.